Right, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started while people trickle back from their quick little 5-minute breaks. But like Tiana said, we are so happy to welcome Ujima Sands with us today. She is the Assistant Vice President of UW Total Management and Inclusion Strategist for UW Human Resources. And she's here today to talk about achieving an inclusive workplace. As Tiana also said, please feel free to continue to put your questions, whether anonymously or with your name, into our Q&A section. And we'll either go through those as we're going, save them for the end, or if we don't have time to get to them, we'll make sure they get answered and sent out after our session is over. With that, I'll hand it off to Ujima Sands. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello there. Good to see all of your faces this afternoon. I know that for some of you, it might be your lunchtime, so feel free to engage if you need to. It doesn't distract me at all. You could share, though. I haven't had lunch quite yet, so. But I understand you all have had a full morning thus far, and so we're together for about an hour. And if I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you just yet, again, Ujima Sands. And my style is very interactive, so feel free to take yourself off mute and ask any questions, or even put them in the chat. I may be delayed in seeing them in the chat, so if someone wants to help me with that, just in case there is something that's there. But I will spend some time talking about achieving an inclusive workplace. When you hear that title, I'm really curious to hear what comes to mind for you when you hear inclusive workplace. What kinds of things are you already thinking about? Feel free to take yourself off mute or put something in the chat there.
Oh, there we go. My mic was up. Danielle, I think about, or my name is Danielle. I think about everyone being able to show up to work authentically and be able to access all of the materials and resources available in the same way without undue burden to them. So everything's spun set up in a way where they can access it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Danielle. Nice to meet you.
Mm-hmm.
As I open the chat, I see diverse, seeing people who look like me, where folks' thoughts and opinions are valued, a welcoming environment, where you can be authentic, minimal hierarchy, safety, safe environment, respectful, lots of really great conversations here. Being able to be myself at work, being able to speak up, anything else we want to add to that space. People don't focus their comments toward the leaders, but to everyone, right? Kind of that inclusive environment, inclusive meritocracy, all of that, right? Not having to walk on eggshells, or worry about yourself. Being recognized as a human, how to recover, feeling seen. Oh, these are all really great. Thank you. When I think about inclusive workplaces, I think of all of those things. And I also, my mind goes toward, right, diverse aspects, but how we also are considering accessibility. That is a huge piece for me. How we design, like universal design, how we lean in to universal design, those ideas of meritocracy, those things that you all can't, like someone being judged on their own merits. All of those things kind of come to mind. So I want to bring some foundation before we jump into data, because I think that that will help ground our presentation a little bit. So I'll start right here first, so that you all understand my intention as I engage in this work. As UWHR's inclusion strategist, this is our DEI vision statement, we aspire to foster an inclusive and equitable workplace where all employees feel valued, respected, and empowered. to contribute. And when we think about that, there's a book out called Design for Belonging. Have any of you ever read Design for Belonging by Susie Wise? Susie Wise is the author. I usually have her book not far from me in my office. But at any rate, it's one that I would recommend. But she talks a lot about this idea of belonging and that we have to create environments of belonging. We actually have to design with that in mind. And this idea that when people feel included, they'll participate. And when they participate, right, they give their contribution. So that's how we make a workplace become much more, a part of something that has all of our DNA, right? And not just one space, not welcoming for others. So I think the vision, I wanted to share that with you because I think it's important because it bespeaks our design for engagement and how we attend to belonging. But the vision is really not much, right, without our strategy. And our strategy is important because it helps you to understand our aim and our commitment. So our aim is really to champion DEI across all facets of our operation. And, UWHR, right, is in charge of policies and procedures and those types of things and practices with the clients that we serve. But really, we want to underscore our commitment to cultivating a culture of belonging and advancing equitable opportunities and participating in initiatives really that dismantle systemic barriers to success. And so that's nice that it kind of sits in this space. It's a strategy, it's crafted nicely, but that doesn't do much for us, right? The strategy itself actually has to be actionable, right? And so with that, one of the things that we wanted to do really with the strategy is start to underscore not just our aim and our commitment, but how that pushes us toward action and what it looks like in like how it shows up in my day-to-day work, right? So many of you know that a part of my work with total talent management, there are 3 departments, right, that make up total talent management. There is campus recruitment, UTEMP, and also professional and organizational development, right? So those 3 departments together. So we endeavor to do a couple things. One is building cultural competence and awareness. So we do a lot of creation of training, and many of you have been through some of our DEI training. Some of you I see on here are even graduates of our BIPOC staff development program. Or participants in that. And so there are many ways that we work and partner with several of you and your departments around how do we bring kind of visibility and training and those kind and educational programs where our employees are, right? So that's part of our business. The second piece of that is recruitment and hiring. And so, we review and enhance our recruitment hiring process, how we attract and retain diverse talent, and focus our outreach efforts, and how we utilize DEI principles in the work that we do within recruitment and hiring. And so, in order to do that, we have to actually know what's going on. So I really want to quickly get to the data so I can show you how we use the data to inform our practices. And then that last piece that you see as a part of our strategic priorities is retention and career development. And that's where we spend quite a bit of time developing strategies to support the retention and career advancement of all employees with a specialized focus, right, on underrepresented employees. And so there's a number of things. The last focus or big push, we piloted our BIPOC staff development program. I think many of you may be familiar with that, but there are a number of other programs that we have utilized. So I'm going to jump into data, some of the analysis. I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, but over the past 4 years, we have been studying our baseline of staff demographic data. And prior to 2020, we hadn't put out a report like that on our staff. So this was a very new venture for us, and it's a very collaborative venture between my office and our HRIS group, and now our EEO and affirmative action officer as well is now in on creation for this year's report. So I'm going to share with you highlights from our 2022 data, because we are just finalizing 2023's data. That capture happens at the end of the year, so we're always kind of just a little behind. So a few things for connectivity when we're utilizing the data. The data in this demographic baseline report that I'm going to share with you, and this is public information, I'm just putting it to you in a different way, provides the opportunity to accomplish workforce planning. So we have an opportunity. We present the UW data, but then we meet with organizations, right, that have more than 100 or more staff, and we give them their actual org report so they know how they're doing in X school or X department, what that profile looks like. So I'm going to share a little bit of that with you. And that is in response to our UW diversity blueprint. In particular, when you read the blueprint, you'll see highlighted goal 4, and goal 4 is about attracting and retaining diverse staff. And it suggests the following action items. It says that we'll update our current hiring processes or practices by analyzing annual hiring data. Well, you actually need some data in order to do that. So we're going to show you what we see from our applicant pools. And then utilize availability data and applicant flow information in our processes as well. So I'll just put a disclaimer that the data contained in this report is in accordance with UW's obligation as a federal contractor, and it provides an institutional view that supports, the affirmative action plan. All right, so without further ado, here is our race and ethnicity breakdown for our current employees. And that was as of our data extraction, October 31st, 2022. And very soon you'll be able to go out and pull that for 2023. We'll be publishing in the next couple of weeks, we expect. So when you take a look here at our race and ethnicity breakdown, you might have some questions. I don't know if you've seen this report in this way before. We do look by location, but again, I did tell you that if you're curious, you can ask folks within your HR area within your organization if they have an individual report. They may, if you have 100 or more employees, staff employees, and they may not if you're a smaller unit. But this report we've done by location. So as you take a look here, you might be noticing a few things. That UW is on average, I would say 55 to 56% white. Do you notice that? If you look at our across the board, it indicates that we have nearly 38 to 40% of underrepresented minority populations. And especially when we remove the folks that declined to disclose or either didn't disclose. Those are two categories that I've been watching pretty closely over the last couple of years. The decline to disclose is when folks actively say, I don't want to give you this data, right? But then there are some areas where people miss giving this data. This is an optional, right, category. And so sometimes people miss it. They can go on to other activities without making a selection here. And so those two areas we want to reduce over time. All right, if you don't take yourself off mute, I don't know if you have any questions, so I'll keep rolling. Are you good? All right, I see a couple of thumbs up. Thank you. So this view has a couple of different images on it, and you might be like, whoa, there's a lot of data on here. So I'm going to focus on A, B, C, and then D, all right? So the A category of our classified staff, that is our largest chunk of staff here at the University of Washington, right? Is our classified staff pool. And you can see our classified staff pool is quite diverse. If you take a look at that pie chart, right, it's 43.5% white, and then look at the rest of the donut. I mean, more than half of that population is underrepresented minority population, right? We have a couple of the did not provide data and declined to disclose. So our second, if we look at B, pro staff grades 5 through 7, that's a smaller subset of folk that are here, our staff at the University of Washington. And you can see the underrepresented minority population shrinks a little bit when we get to pro staff grades 5 through 7, right? And then I want you to take a look at what happens when you look at our visual C. Pro staff grades 8 through 10, which is another large chunk of folks. Probably most of, if you know, us fit within that pro staff grades 8 through 10. If you'll notice what happens here, right, is our underrepresented minority population shrinks even more. Do you see that? Right? And then lastly, I'll draw your attention to D, the visual D. And this is a smaller subset, right, of our population at the University of Washington, pro staff grades 11 through 14. And you will see not represented in this data are those who are now other exempt, right, are now being represented by union. Those are not included in this data, was not a part of the data set for 2022. But going forward, we will capture that. Well, when we get to grades 11 through 14, what you see is that this is our least, right? Our least representative of representation of underrepresented minority populations. It becomes, there's a swing that happens, right? When you take a look at our data in this way. So without kind of seeding into some of what you might be seeing here, let me just advance my screen to share with you a couple of observations, and then I'm going to pause. Oh, is there a question?
Sorry, there's a question about some of that data. One is, does classified staff include unionized staff?
Yes.
And then also, what are some of the common positions behind the different grades level B through D?
Good questions. All right. So yes, classified staff does represent those covered by a union, covered or represented by a union. And then there are some that are classified non-union folk. So that's the answer to that. Let me go back. My screen. Is there a delay on your end? Are you seeing the charts again? Yes, perfect. All right. So there are a myriad of positions that could be, you know, within our classified positions. You may see our custodial positions. You could see there might be program coordinator positions that might be included there. For pro staff, grades 5 through 7, you may see like frontline supervisor in that category. There could be administrative, some type of administrative coordinating, whether that's program coordinator, administrative assistant, pro staff grades 8 through 10, could be like HR specialist, that comes to mind. There could be other positions within 8 through 10, and then 11 through 14 would be your managers and directors. They could, though, be individual contributors as well at a project level, like a project manager, but mostly those that have directors that maybe even they could be department heads in that category as well. So hopefully that gives you some idea. And if not, you can look at Comp's website, and it will have the breakdown with tons of positions and their grades linked there. So some of the observations, and then I'm going to stop sharing my screen here so I can actually see your faces. Some of the observations that we came up with were compared to recent American Community Survey data from the U.S. Census Bureau. The UW actually shows we are more diverse than Seattle, and we're slightly more diverse than our overall region. However, you know, when we actually break that down a bit further, we see more into that, and we start to understand that a little bit differently. In the 2022 report, both new hires and terminations were very similar in reported racial and ethnic composition. So what that means is, of the 4,000 new hires during the 1-year reporting period, 41.2% were BIPOC. And of the 8,780 terminated during that same 1-year period, 40.3% were BIPOC. So that means, I mean, there was a slight increase, very slight, 0.9% or so increase there. So we really were able to maintain our BIPOC population. But looking back in 2020, we reported 38% BIPOC hires and 31.6% BIPOC terminations. And in 2021, we reported 40.7% BIPOC hires and 37.4% BIPOC terminations. So you can see there's some yields or gains, if you will, within our diverse populations, if you will, our race and ethnic diversity. So if the pattern continues with similar increasing percentages of BIPOC hires compared to BIPOC terminations, we're likely to maintain our current workforce diversity or see an increasingly diverse workforce over time. What we know is that typically those in the 11 to 14, there's not a lot of movement, right, in those positions. And so that category is typically representative of our past hiring practices, like many years ago. So I want to take you to our applicant journey, but like I promised, let me stop share. I'm talking for a second. Where did y'all go? I can't see you. There you are. All right. Now that I can see your faces, I want to stop just really quickly and ask what questions that you might have.
Looks like Sean has his hand raised.
Oh, go for it. Hi, Sean.
How you doing, Ujima? Yeah, thank you for that, and I really appreciate your team making that data available. It's going to go a long way in future conversations. The last thing that you just touched on about the movement of the grade ranks 11 through 14 is definitely will take a while to realign. And I think that the last speaker touched upon it, the bias in the search process on one of the systemic limiters is having the degree requirements that are put out there. Is there any way, do you have that current visibility to be able to look at those in those positions who are there with the letters following their name and their position?
I don't know that I mean, now that you all know that we're kicking off our great effort to migrate right to Workday recruitment. And so that's going to be a huge help with us capturing, because I think you're asking it, do I know credentials? Like, can we see, right, some of that? Workday does a much better job than UW Hires did with kind of capturing that data for us. Could we have visibility into that? I'm certain we might be able to call that. It's not a part of our focus at this immediate point. What we're looking at right now, Sean, that you bring up is around equivalencies, minimum qualifications, degree requirements, all of that, to see what is necessary. And so, right, and the state actually has a lot to say about what our minimum qualifications should and could be, and if we can continue to have degree requirements as a part of our job postings, right? And so we know that much of that has gone away. UW is looking quite a bit at equivalencies in terms of experience, right? And being able to leverage that. Michelle, I saw your hand up. Please go for it. Chime in. These are my friends in the work here.
Hello, and good afternoon, everyone. Wanted to ask a question about the data that you so graciously shared with us. What date or what as of date was that data pulled? Would you remind us, please?
Yes, that was October 31st of 2022. As you know, when our team pulls data, we pull at the end of the year. And so the timing of this presentation just was a bit before our 2023 data. And I do have that, y'all. The baseline is complete for 2023, but we always share it with the Board of Regents and we publicize it within now, we'll start the visibility campaign shortly thereafter. So it just has gone to stakeholders. But Michelle, I know that you and Sean on the screen, because I can see you both, will be happy to know that you'll get your org reports for 2023 really soon here, actually. You'll get it so much sooner than ever before. So.
Well, thank you so much, but it also helps me realize that there were some hires after that, which
That's right.
Not in this data.
Not represented.
So I'm really interested in seeing our data now. Thank you so much.
And so for those of you who you might just be seeing this for the first time, one of the things that we know is that, right, we've been looking at this data for 4 years. However, I mean, we want longitudinal data. Longitudinal data is not something you realize in a 4-year period of time. However, saying that, we have seen significant strides in various organizations because of the various initiatives that your units have had, right? And your actions and things that you have done specifically to impact who is attracted, right, to your units and to the University of Washington. So we're hoping in a couple of years we'll even see more. Were there any questions before I go back to the screen share? All right, I think this put us back. Are you seeing my screen? Yep. I'm gonna move forward. Oh, shucks. Did it move forward? Yes. Here we go. Sorry. All right. So the overall data that I shared reflected a diverse workforce at UW. And breaking down the data does allow us to get a glimpse of where UW is most and least diverse. And so I think what's important to kind of capture from this is that further analysis does reveal we are disproportionately diverse across our institution. And what that means is that there's a higher representation of BIPOC staff in positions that, you know, are in lower professional staff grades and in most of our classified roles. Okay, so what I'm saying is the higher up, right, the grade, the less racially and ethnically diverse our workforce is. And this is consistent with the data from 2020 and 2021 report. So that is something for us to understand, to raise the visibility to, and then to talk about how we create pathways, right, for people to make it to different positions. So overall, 52.1% of UW staff workforce is white, compared with 74.6% of professional staff in grades 11 to 14. Does that make sense? Right? 65.1% of professional staff in grades 8 to 10 are white. 56% of professional staff in grades 5 through 7 are white, and 43.5% of classified staff across all of our locations. So given that our classified staff make up 56.3% of our overall workforce at UW, that number greatly impacts. That's why we're looking like, oh, we're so diverse, right? That it improperly kind of skews that representation. So another thing that I was asked about was retention, right, and hiring. And retention and hiring both affect BIPOC representation. So during the hiring period, so we look at the fiscal year, so July 2021 through June 2022, so reporting period, 40.3% of the terminations were BIPOC staff, and 41.2% of the new hires were BIPOC. That resulted in a slight gain in BIPOC representation and slightly increasing the diversity of our workforce. Hi, Christina. Interrupt me. Go for it. I think I see your hand, right?
No, I'm so intrigued about this because when you mentioned career advancement, I'm like, my ears perked up. I do want to make, I have a question. So with the 41.2% of new hires being BIPOC, were these new hires, do you know what paying grade they were in? Was it in the grade 11, grade 5 through 6? Like, do you have that information?
We do in the overall baseline report. I'm just giving you some aggregate data and kind of making your tentacles, like if you haven't looked at it, that you'll go out there and look at the full 64-page report that's out online. And if somebody who's online can give a link in the chat to where to find the baseline reports, then that would be helpful for folks. But yes, we are able to see that information. I don't know that off the top of my head. I gave you an aggregate for all of our hires. I think the other question that would come to mind is like how much of this are new folks coming into the university, and how much is that like movement, right? Internal hire movement. So I'm going to show you a little bit of that in a sec. Did I miss another one? I can see Christina in my view. No? All right. Just yell at me. During the same reporting period, 43.4% of employees who moved, like this is the big one, right? Who moved within the UW identified as BIPOC. So that coupled with the slight gains in other areas and gave an overall increase in BIPOC staff over the past few years, where we're, 10,200 in the 2020 report to 2022. 11,191, right? Those are positive indicators of retention. You can see, I mean, BIPOC staff are finding jobs that are desirable, right? Reasons to move within the University of Washington. So those are really positive signs. Do we understand what all of the reasons for this are? Not just yet. We got to keep on digging to understand why some of these trends are even with us today. So I wanted to touch on really quickly our applicant journey, because this data is out there as well, and it's consolidated here for you. But with the applicant data, I think what's important to know is that so our applicants are in purple, our candidates are in gold, and hires are in that kind of lighter shade. The applicants is everybody who applied, right, for the position. Candidates are people who were qualified and were sent to hiring managers' workbenches, right? So that they could be included in consideration for positions. And so sometimes people don't understand the difference between those two. It's real important to know the difference. So applicants is everybody who walked through the door. Candidates are people who were actually considered for the position. So when we're looking at this piece of it, one of the things that my team and I are concerned with is, right, what is the race and ethnic diversity? What is the disability diversity? What is the veteran diversity, right, of our applicant pools? And also sex comes into play as well. And I'll leave that for just a bit. But one of the things that we're considering when we're looking at race and ethnic diversity is how many, who was present in the applicant pool and who made it from applicant to candidate. But that's not, go ahead. Was there a question? Okay. If there is, interrupt me. So
there is a question in the Q&A section. I heard that unmute as well. And I don't know if it's the same person, but someone put in the chat, I guess I feel a little disappointed in the number of BIPOC staff leaving, as well as the numbers of BIPOC overall remains the same. And do we know why folks are leaving?
Yeah, so in our baseline data report, we can see reasons, so termination reasons. So we have terminations as one category in the baseline, and the reason codes. Reason codes, though, are very tricky because it really depends on what people tell us are their reason for leaving. And I don't know if y'all have ever left a job before. You sometimes don't want to burn bridges, right? Like you don't, I don't know how accurate that information is, right? But whatever the person who's entering that termination data, typically our HR folks that are entering that termination data, what we see as like general resignation, no reason given, right, is a high one. The second is better for better opportunities. And that can be interpreted in a number of ways. I don't know if that means that there's a higher pay or the job is more attractive, or right, like, so there's not a consistent exit interview process at UW. If you don't know that, maybe your department has a consistent exit interview process. But yes, thank you for your comment. We can see that. And again, we still need to continue to dig deep to understand what that movement is. All right, the last thing I'll say on applicant journey is one of the things that really is significant to us is what percentage of those who were considered candidates actually make it to hires. Like what percentage of any one of these populations are making it over to our hires? And do we see potential for bias in our hiring process, right? Maybe we see a department who has maybe a preference for hiring this category over, right, this population over another identity population. So when we see those things, we do try to raise visibility to them. When we talk with leaders, with the HR folks, hiring folks within a department, we will point that out. We will say, hey, there looks like there might be some bias in your process. You might want to do a bias audit. But we also know that there's more to this story. Sometimes what happens is that it takes a long time. I don't know about y'all, you've been hired here, right? So sometimes within that hiring process, maybe we have diverse candidates that drop out of the process, right? And so one of the things that we've been trying to do is get the messaging out there that it would be great if people would, the hiring officials, right, would note, why are people dropping out of the process? Or is it because of salary? Is it because of whatever? Because we don't have remote opportunities, or what is it? So that we can raise that visibility. So we don't have enough data just yet for me to speak definitively about that. Was there another question, AJ? I saw you off of mute.
Yes, there are a couple more. So one is, have you all considered doing an anonymous survey to get a better idea of why BIPOC folks are leaving UW? Also, are you tracking departments at UW that have high turnover with BIPOC folks leaving? What is being done to work with those departments to increase retention in BIPOC staff?
These are all really great questions. And so, yes, so we are tip of the iceberg, and I think the possibilities are quite endless with what we can do. What we can do is make suggestions, right, at this larger university level, UW-HR, but we do respect that many of your units have your own DEI leads, that you have your hierarchy and organizational structure that we work within. So we partner with your individual units to think about. So there isn't a heavy mandate, if you will, that comes down from UW-HR that says, whoa, this is what's we provide the data. And in a highly decentralized, doing DEI in a highly decentralized university structure such as ours is very difficult, and we acknowledge that. And so we try to partner in collaboration. So have we thought of doing some of the things that you suggest? We thought of those things, and we think about how do we partner with your individual units to do some of that work. Will we be moving into that space? Well, we typically take our tone and tenor every year when we attend the Board of Regents meeting. We present the data, and then we take our directives from what the regents will ask us to focus on within the coming year. So we're going in a couple weeks. So we will we will know what our new directive is.
Great. I've got two more questions from the chat, and then I see Sean has his hand raised as well.
Yeah.
One question is about this slide in particular. I see the percentage of white candidates is higher than the percentage of white applicants. Is that because folks were being considered for jobs they had not applied to?
No, it just means that they were more, they were hired probably at the expense of one of the other, one of the racial or ethnic categories. So, for example, if you take a look at, I'll go to the Asian population. We have 22% of our applicant pool was Asian, 20% were candidates, but they were only hired at 16.8%. Does that make sense? So, right, so the division, like, I don't, and again, the number of reasons why this is happening, if we go back and we do an audit within UW hires, we could see a number of things. There could be highly qualified applicants within these pools that maybe they decline our jobs, right? there could be a number of stories that are made up there. And so that's where the org level reports come in to play, and we can talk at an organization level instead of the higher university level. But hopefully that answers that question.
The next two questions I think I combine into one. And if you want to move on because you're going to answer this later, that's perfectly fine. But the questions are, I'm wondering how we can encourage consistent hiring, promotions, equitable job descriptions, et cetera, and what can be done to counter these differences in certain groups, job fairs within these communities.
Great. Those are great questions. Some of it we'll touch on, but maybe not. So let me just say a couple of things. Is that one of the things that we're doing, right? It will be around programming, right? We're thinking about, we advocated year before last with the Board of Regents when we saw the data, what could we do? And the birth of the BIPOC staff development program came to be, right? We had to get some funding in order to do that. And then we thought about how do we make these pathways open? How do we think about, we don't have money to do one-to-one mentorship, but how do we do peer mentorship or learning pods and things of that nature, right? So how do we empower folks with information to ensure that they can make decisions about, I firmly believe that people need to be in the front seat of their career decisions, right? In partnership with what the university can do and provide. It's not something that just happens to you, but should happen through you, right? So I hope that answers that piece of it, but I'll continue on with some more showcasing some of our programs.
I
know that Sean's had his hand up for a little bit before we move on.
I'll try to be quick. This is more in response to something that comments that you made earlier, just about trying to influence the policies. And I was just going to report back to you and also those within this call who are in the Department of Medicine. As a DEI leader here, I'm proud to say that we just started opening up the exit interviews. So for anyone within who has colleagues within the Department of Medicine, if they're not asked to do one, they can ask for it, because that is the service that now we're supposed to offer. But I would like for our next step to do for the retention standpoint, to do stay interviews, because that's where it's important.
Exactly.
I mean, those people are having negative experiences, to be able to be proactive in what would keep them around.
Yes, I would agree. And to that extent, we built an employee experience toolkit that encourages leaders to have stay interviews with their existing staff. So if you go to the pod website, you'll see employee experience toolkit, and in there is a number of questions and ways in which to engage with staff around helping us to understand, like make it easy. But not only is there a toolkit, we also built some training to help leaders, and there's an employee experience toolkit accelerator for folks that want that.
Thanks. I want to be mindful, Ujima, that we have 13 minutes left on the clock, and there are more questions coming in as well as a hand raise, but I want to invite you to go ahead and continue, and we can come back at the end if we have any further questions.
Okay, let me just breeze through, because I think a part of this conversation is our internal hires, right? When we take a look at our current staff and our internal hires, this is the race and ethnic breakdown of what happens with in the 2022. Remember, we're a year behind here in the data, but I wanted to have you break out into a couple other things. But in the internal hires, I wanted to give you the picture or snapshot of our BIPOC movement, right, for internal hires. And you'll see that. Somebody asked me earlier, what is the breakdown within our internal hires for BIPOC staff? And you'll see that here by grade, right? So on the right-hand side of the screen, 49.1% of our classified staff, that movement within classified staff were BIPOC staff. Grades 5 through 7, 41.6%. 8 through 10, 31.9%, and grades 11 to 14, 21.8%. So, there are opportunities that open up, and there is movement within So lots of still data for you to, continue to noodle on. A part of this picture, though, is not just race and ethnicity, right? It's disability and veteran status. And I apologize, I don't have much time to rest here, but I think it's an important part of our conversation that we have quite a large part of our university population that does not provide data for our disability response. And so if people don't tell us, we can't build programming, we can't, we can do what we think would help in this space, but we can't have proper planning. But I am happy to say in 2023, we've seen this number go up because we sent another round of messaging and communication out to our university population. And so we've been able to reduce that number by just a bit. But you'll see 5.7% of our population indicate that they have a disability. But we know that when we look at other data, it tells us that that number should be just a bit higher. So we do anticipate, how do we build out programming differently? What policies need to exist in this space? And then when we turn our attention to our veteran population, about 2.2% of our population identify as veteran. And we have a lower number of response there in terms of who did not provide data, about 28.9%. And you get two opportunities to answer these questions right now. One is when you're in UW Hires, there's some information there. And then also when you're hired, when you're in Workday, you have some opportunity to input this information as well. So lastly, I'll focus on, and then I'll leave time for questions and I'll be able to see your faces. But the BIPOC Staff Development Program, it launched in 2022 with 197 participants, and we had a number of goals, right? We wanted to strengthen connections and promote development and advance cultural inclusion at UW. So we had some aspiration. And we gave opportunities for folks who were classified staff and professional staff levels 5 through 8. We functioned as a cohort model. It was a centrally funded program, and there were a lot of different aspects of the program. Participants completed core requirements. They had learning pods. And they pursued classes in their chosen area of specialization, which they could choose administrative, HR, or supervisory. And then they had those a year to complete the 6 of the core classes that you'll see on the screen, but they had 3 years to complete overall their area of specialization. And we had several graduates already of the program. I think it was important for folks to understand, kind of how the breakdown of the program of those 197 folks, 35% were classified staff. Oh gosh, we should have had point in here, not thousands, but 6.8%, were pro staff, 8% were, pro staff grade 6. 29% were pro staff grades 7, and 28% were pro staff grade 8. And remember, it went through from classified to pro staff 5 through 8. And there was a lot of interest around various areas, mainly administrative excellence, in terms of earning that certificate, and supervisory, closely followed by the supervisory. We had a lot of testimonials from the program of things that people that shared with us. And the thing that I think we wanted was the first one. The program created a sense of belonging and inclusivity that people said they never worked, right? This person said they never worked, felt working at the University of Washington, and they work here for decades, being able to learn and grow with other BIPOC voices. I think that was quite significant. And then in addition to the BIPOC Staff Development Program, we also launched the POD Scholarship Program. Maybe some of you have taken advantage of it to create improved access to career and professional development for folks that, maybe your unit doesn't always have money. We know there are some units that have more funds than others. And so it was funded by formerly the Office of Planning and Budgeting and our VP of UW-HR. And the focus was for classified staff and pro staff, grades 5 through 9. And so really, and this is a last year snapshot, we had given nearly $15,000 in these scholarships for folks who applied for them. So I just wanted to point that out as well. And then lastly, in recruiting and staffing, we have increased our intentionality around our hiring practices. I talked about this earlier, reducing minimum qualifications to open up access, to shift to competencies, right, over fit. We have updated our equitable hiring class and met with leaders all across UW as well, and coming into units to talk about equitable hiring. We go to in-person job fairs, right, for diverse groups, and then look for other avenues for outreach. So I'm going to stop share there because I probably have like 5 minutes, 4 minutes, and ask you. That was a lot. I talked a long time. That wasn't my intention. What questions do you have? You can see lots of stuff happening. Hi, Christine. Is it Christine or Kristen?
Kristen, hi. Nice
Kristen.
to meet you. This has been great to hear everything that you've presented today. Thank you so very much for your time. My question at the moment is around the scholarship program. It is something that I had looked into when it was launched. It caught my eye immediately. It was bad timing for myself, but I'd like to know, I'm looking on the website right now, is there a next date for applications? I'm not seeing that on the website.
BIPOC's BIPOC Staff Development Program or the scholarship program?
Thank you for the POD Scholarship Program.
Yes, it's launched every quarter. Every
Okay.
quarter that we have funding, I should knock on wood somewhere, every quarter that we have funding. So it will be launched again. It's taken down once all of the scholarship funds have been used for that quarter. So look again for our next quarter.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. What other questions? Is there?
Ujima, we do have a few questions in the Q&A. Would you like to answer those?
Sure.
Okay, perfect. So the first one was, have you found that most people in the did not provide data section ended up being white?
I can't answer the, I can't answer that with a surety. I will say that once folks, if they did not provide data when they were applicants or candidates, typically when they are hired, we get more definitive response around their identity.
Thank you. The next one was, is there work being done to streamline, speed up the hiring process here at UW to avoid those candidate dropouts? I know you kind of addressed that a little bit, but.
Yeah, I think that we're hoping to realize some significant gains when we go to one system of Workday recruiting. We've already unlocked only one portion of what we do in Workday recruiting. And so we're continuing to look at what we do with our recruitment process. Yeah.
Thank you. And we have one other one from the Q&A, and then the others will be collecting everyone. So continue to throw them in. Thank you for the questions. The last one is the person was curious if there is information on these statistics based on what professions our staff are in, regarding if they're healthcare providers, or if they're professional staff, classified staff, which you did address that, or like in leadership. So kind of what that hierarchical breakdown looks like.
Yes, so I would invite you to go out to the baseline data report so you can dig a little bit deeper and see that. And if you're not seeing something, you can always reach out to us. But also, I want to invite you to go, if your unit has a DEI lead, more than likely they have a report for your particular organization, which makes it more contextualized for you. But always happy. I happen to be the only Ujima. I heard Elizabeth mention that at the university. So you can find me pretty quickly, ujima@uw.edu or UWHR's DEI team as well.
Perfect. Well,
so
thank you so
much.
much, Ujima. Yeah, this has been fantastic. You shared so much insightful information. I wish we had more time. It went really fast. And you all had a really great question. So thank you for those. We do have a 15-minute break right now. So from 2 until 2:15, please get up, stretch, grab a snack, maybe finish your lunch if you didn't have time for that. And then our next session will be with a long talk. We're really excited for this one. It's an anti-racism activation experience with a fantastic organization that does work across the country with different higher ed institutions and nonprofits. I invite you all to attend that one. Ujima, if you're not busy, please sit in. It would be great. But thank you all so much, and please continue to throw your questions into our Q&A.
Thank you all. Have a good afternoon.
Bye.